This is the existing table for my boat, and I've taken it apart to clean that up. I started sanding the first board. You can see it does look pretty good. The sanders that I'm using are these two. I watched some videos and people are using rotary sanders, and I've always been taught that you have to sand with the grain. So a rotary sander doesn't make any sense to me, but the results were pretty nice. So I have a lot of work to do, prep to do before I even start assigning any kind of finish work to it. But you can see it's a nice table. It does come up like this, and then there's a clever little method on the bottom that there's a board comes across here. It pivots out, and then it holds this guy up. I can't reach it. And then it has the piano hinges here, and I've taken the piano hinge off of that one, and this board's turned out fairly good. Quite a bit more sanding to do on that. And this is the well, I guess we would call this the before. So it is a slow process. You take the wood and you sand it, and you sand it, and you sand it. And of course you have to unassemble it or disassemble it, and then sand it, and keep sanding it. And I have a long way to go. Obviously there's no sponsorship here, but I do like the Ryobi or Ryobi, and I'm particularly fond of this guy, which is a relatively new purchase, because the sandpaper actually just fastens with Velcro type of fastening to the bottom, whereas this guy is a bit of a pain to assemble it and fasten it correctly, and it seems to come out a bit, but I like that guy. Anyway, just a quick progress shot to show that getting a few more pieces to start to get the varnish off. I still have a long way to go as far as sanding goes, but it's I think it is actually starting to look pretty good. Often it helps to have some sort of record of how the pieces are assembled, so that I can put them back the way they're supposed to be. So this is, in a previous video, I showed this little piece. I didn't show this little piece because I couldn't, but this rotates out to hold the leaf when it's in place, and then when it's supposed to be down, then this little piece slides back in. But I just wanted to do a quick video to show myself mostly what these pieces look like that I'm disassembling, so I know how to put it back together properly. There's a nice washer on both sides of this to help it rotate. So it looks like whoever, well, my friend Louis Norris, who has since passed, did this for me the last time, and it looks like he didn't take it apart. He just varnished on top of it. Well, I'll take it apart and get that varnish off of there. I'm getting close to finishing the sanding. You know, you sand, and then you sand, and then you sand, and then you sand some more. So I'm prepped for the next phase, which will be, I have some good materials here, the tack cloth on the left, and then I use the gloves to keep the oil from my hands off of the wood, and then of course the Interlux varnish and a Interlux thinner. So the first several coats that go on will be very, very, very thin. But before that happens, I have teak cleaner parts 1 and 2, which I think are pretty important too. And then I have a little brush there that I use to brush the sand, the wood off of the pieces rather than using my hand to wipe it off. I'm not claiming to be any kind of an expert. I'm just sharing how I approach this. And one of the secrets that I use that has worked for me is that it's not a rush. I take my time, do it right, and take my time again and go back and try to do it even better, so that over the course of several weeks of sanding, I should be ready to move on to the next phase, and I'm all set up with my pieces there in order to do that. It's the middle of September 2024 right now, and it's the end of the season for the boat anyway, so there's no great loss by not having this in the cockpit to set anything on, because probably not going to be up in the cockpit anyway now. My goal is possibly achievable, is to get the sanding completed before the middle of next week, where I'll go back out and spend a week or so on the boat and let the dust settle as much as possible here in my workshop. And then maybe in a couple weeks when I get back, I'll be ready to start actually varnishing, preparing for the varnishing. But I think I might not make my deadline. All right, so now the second coat of Semco teak cleaner has been put on. Did lighten it up a little bit. It got pretty dark on that first one, but on the second one, and the instructions say that it will lighten it up. I hope I didn't kill that ivy down there with the Semco. I don't suspect it would, but anyway, I can see a few spots where I missed some varnish, which is not good. So I'm gonna let this stuff dry and come back in a couple of weeks. I'm gonna be on the boat for a couple of weeks, but I'll come back home and it should be ready for varnish. All right, so the next phase is the tack cloths to wipe down all of the wood so that it has the least amount of little dust particles on it. Can't get rid of all of them, I'm sure. But yesterday I did the Semco parts 1 and parts 2, and that worked out pretty good. It's a little scary at first because it gets really dark, and then the places where the hinges go, the stainless steel hinges go, I didn't really do a lot of removal there, because there's a little lip there between, there's two surfaces here, and I didn't really want to destroy the second surface. Just a slight little lip there. You can't, it's on the top here. Let's see. A little bit at the top, and then down here at the bottom. That's where the hinge goes, but it fits in there. I didn't want to grind down the top part. So anyway, this is the next phase, is to tack down all of with the tack cloths, with a professional tack cloth there, and use that to pick up as much little particles that are on the boards as possible. But this is going to sit for a couple of weeks while I'm out on the East Coast on the boat. hopes that the dust will be settled more so than we have right now. And we got the little robot cleaning the floor. I'll use a carpet shampooer to clean this nice rubber floor that I have in my workshop. And then I'll get some more of the dust out, and a lot of the dust will settle hopefully over the next 2 weeks, and then on to the next phase. Okay, back in the saddle. My first coat is about 50% Interlux 333 brushing liquid and 50% Interlux Schoner varnish. And so it's a very light coat on these boards. They're still wet right now, and I will show that. They look pretty good for the first coat. They're still wet. They'll get better. And then I have the other pieces. First coat, again, just the varnish, 50-50, 50 thinning, 50% thinning oil, 50% varnish, or approximately. And that's the first base coat on the one side. Let it dry for a day. Put the other sides, pieces, get them varnished, and then let them dry for a day. And then I will go on to, I use steel wool, preferably bronze or brass, copper, whatever. That doesn't rust, although it doesn't matter here. When I was on the boat last week, some of those pieces do stay on the deck somewhere and they rust. So it's not a good idea to use anything but a non-rusting type of abrasive. I don't use sandpaper. I just scruff it up with steel wool. And like I said, I'm no expert. I'm just sharing how I do it. So this is the day after the first coat of varnish was put on. It was mostly thinner, 50% thinner, maybe a little bit more on these pieces of wood. And they look fairly nice, a little darker than they were originally. That might be because of the thinner, but when I looked at the video before, you could see little bubbles in some few spots, but they're gone now. And I use these disposable brushes. I use this one to put the varnish on, but then I used a littler one to go around the edges that didn't, now the brush didn't have any varnish on it, but I just put it, used it to go around the edges in the event that there was possibly some drip. Let's see if any of the varnish had dripped. So just along the edge, I just run it across the edge there with a fresh brush, just in case there's any dripping. You know, it should stop the drips from happening. With the amount of varnish that's there, which is 50%, shouldn't probably get any drips. Now I know in a previous video I said I was going to take these off, but I decided not to because what's happened is these screws weren't coming out, and so that's a good reason to just leave them in. It's not a big deal anyway. So this is the other boards. Now this is the actual tabletop that pivots up and has the lip on the end. Again, I didn't take the screws out here because when I was taking the screws out of here, one of them just stripped, and so I thought maybe it would be better not to disassemble this little lip here and just leave it there. I think it's okay. Okay, now this is the bottom portion of the wood, first time being stained with about 50%. I used the bronze wool, which really wasn't necessary here. But what happens is on the boat, as I've said many times, is that steel wool rusts. If you don't get it all off the deck, you got some rust. So this is wet. All I did was the top that's exposed now, and then I used that small little 1-inch brush to go around, and maybe if there's any sort of drips, to try to pick it up. And then these are the other pieces here. You can see it's still wet, but it should dry better looking. But this is just the first coat. The bronze wool did a really nice job of smoothing it out, and it provides sort of an abrasive, rough finish for future coats of varnish. So it's a good thing to do, but it's certainly less compact than steel wool is. So there's a lot of little pieces. So before I put this coat on, I had to do definitely had to do the tack rags to get any possible little bronze pieces that were left, to get them off. So I've mixed the varnish and the thinning or brushing liquid, about 25% thinning liquid and 75% varnish. So it's starting to look a little bit better. I do spend a lot of time with that bronze wool. I'm trying to get, everything nice and smooth. I am seeing some bubbles in here right now, but I think it'll maybe level out as it dries. If not, then I'll just use some more bronze wool. I'm definitely not gonna I'm gonna get some regular steel wool. The bronze wool doesn't last very long. It's, I don't know, maybe flimsy would be the word, but it's just it just kind of vanishes, I guess is the best word. So starting to build this up. I'll probably put 7 or 8, maybe 9 coats on it. So you can see I'm starting to get a nicer little finish. The first coat was 50-50 varnish to thinning liquid, and the second coat now is 25% thinning liquid and 75% varnish. So I've got a long way to go, but it's starting to look nicer anyway. This is definitely a lot of work. This is the first coat of 100% varnish on this side, and it looks good. It finishes, it dries differently. I was waiting the 24 hours, but they wait the 24 hours and then you start prepping, and then it's 26 or 27 hours before you're ready to put the next coat on, and then you got to wait 24 hours from that. So I took the old blue tape off and I went and bought some 1-inch tape, which is still too wide. So I had to cut all of that tape. It would have been nice if the blue tape had little lines on it indicating where 5/8 was, or 9/16 or 7/16. That would have been beneficial for me. I don't know how that works for most people, just trying to protect an edge. And these are the other boards. First coat of full varnish, 100%, and then the steel wool scruffs it down quite a bit, and then I put some more coats on. I'm thinking, well, this is a long process. My buddy Louis Norris did this for me, took it home, brought it back all varnished. I think he charged me $200, and it was quite a gift. I didn't realize it at the time, but there's a tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into making this as good as I can. I don't claim to be a professional varnisher by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a lot of work. So, got a lot of brushes, not enough. I'm sure I'll have to do more, but I also take the good use of the yogurt containers, the glass containers, and as I took my pieces apart, I put them in separate containers, so hopefully as I go to put it back together, I'll have all of the pieces there that I can use for reassembly without, looking through every single one. Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? So I think that's a good method too. So I have one coat of all varnish, no thinner, and this is before I start to put the second coat on. I have it scruffed up with the steel wool to give the varnish, the newest coat of varnish, something to grab onto. I haven't put the what do we call that stuff? I'll have to go look at it. I forgot the name of it. Tack cloth. That's what happens when you get old. Sometimes you forget these things. So, just looking at it, it's dirty for sure right now. One of the advantages of doing one side at a time, of course, is that I get to scruff up the most current finish twice, because I do it once now, and then I'll do it again before I actually put another coat of varnish on it. All right, another coat of full varnish on one of the sides. It's starting to look better and better. After I scruff it, it does kind of lose a lot of the sheen. I hope it doesn't lose a lot of the actual varnish. I think I'm starting to get some coats on there. So now I'm in, I think around 2 o'clock. So tomorrow I won't be able to start till 2. That means I'll finish at 3 or 3:30, and then that'll put me in, I'm moving a couple hours every day away from the start time, adding an extra couple hours. These are the leaves that fold up or down, and there's another full coat of varnish on here. Seems like after all the work, it doesn't really make sense not to put several coats of varnish on here. Plus, due to the season, it's middle of October. All right, another coat of 100% varnish. Things are definitely looking really good in most cases. There's some spots where I'm not quite sure why this is happening, but it is, and I'll show it to you on the other boards. But I took one rail off for the leaf, and the other, this is one of them, and then the other one I left on because I had troubles with the screws. I'm not sure if it's showing up, but this is where I got some trouble right on the edge there. It's a little extra buildup of varnish. Now I take the steel wool and I smooth it down, but then I'm still getting some buildup at some spots on the edges, not all of them. But I gotta say, it certainly looks better than it did before, but that's not much of a comparison or anything to say. There's a tremendous amount of effort. I'm conflicted going back out on the boat for a couple of weeks next week, which means I could get maybe 5 or 6 coats of varnish on these boards, and I would be rushing to get it back up, and I don't see any reason to get it back up. So I will probably not make the next deadline to get this guy, this table reassembled and put back in the cockpit. And now another coat of 100% varnish. Definitely is sort of rewarding, really, to take a look at the progress that's being made here. And I just don't see any reason not to keep putting varnish on. You know, it's the end of the season. There's no rush to put it back. And so I'll just keep scruffing and trying to clean up any little globs that are there. Try to do the best that I can. Maybe someone who's looking at these might say, hey, you're doing this wrong or you're doing that wrong. I think there's a place on YouTube to do exactly that. And if any professionals out there see something wrong, I'd definitely appreciate a comment on what should be done. I know one thing that I'm not doing is filtering the varnish. I'm just applying it straight. I know they sell filters that might be a little bit better method, but it's definitely looking good to me. All right, it's got some drips here. You can see on the side I got some drips there. I try to wipe that off with the 1-inch foam brush after I apply the varnish up here. My goal is to get enough varnish on there so we don't see the grain, the drips in the grain, you know, the up and down, the peaks and valleys is the goal. But I don't know if that's just going to keep replicating over and over and over again. We'll just keep putting some more on. It's looking good. And here we go with these are the leaves. Getting a little more. Whoa. Wonder what that is. It looks some kind of dust. Hopefully that came after. Oh my gosh, it's all over the place. I don't know where that came from or what it is, but you can still see in one of these it looked like there was a couple of fingerprints, like right there. Kind of looks like fingerprints. And I'm wearing those rubber gloves or latex gloves, so I don't know why we got that, but I'm getting ready now to scruff it up for another coat. Okay, so we're looking at another scruffing, which you can see takes off the shine in some places where I got the bubbles or drips. It takes off quite a bit of the varnish. But I was mentioning in a previous video, I thought I saw some fingerprints on the board, and I was thinking about it, and I couldn't understand how I could get fingerprints by wearing these latex gloves. But I'll bet what happened was I touched my face with my gloves, and then I touched the boards. I'm tempted, these are the leaves, I'm tempted to go back to a less than 100% varnish and just keep putting it on thinner. I think I'll do that today. Go back to maybe 25% thinner and 75% varnish. All right, I switched back to 25% varnish. That other 100% just seemed too thick, and I'm not in any hurry, so I'm back. Ooh, that's got some imperfections in it. And I'm also going to start using the filters. I'm going to buy some filters and start using them. There's a little bit of a film on top of the varnish in the can, so that's a problem. I like this looking a little bit better. So these are the leaves. I just like the thinner coats. And there's no rush to finish, so there's no reason, in my opinion, to keep putting all of that varnish on there. Now there might be a reason to just stop putting all that varnish on there, and I might find it out, but I think we'll stick with this. There's a few imperfections here, and I was thinking that had I taken this lip off, if we go over here on this side, you can see it probably will look better on the piece that I took that lip off, because I didn't quite get in there all the way. It looks a little, maybe some of the varnish is still there, so that might have been a mistake too. The only reason I didn't take it off, I wasn't lazy, but one of those screws was hard to get out on the other lip. So these are the leaves, getting a little bit better. More coats on it. While I was at Walmart today, I was looking for thinner blue tape. They didn't have anything. It's all 0.94 inches that I've identified. Now, there's going to need a lot of work there too, and I don't know what happened. Now, from previous videos, I did a lot of sanding on some of the edges. It looks like I need to do some work here, definitely. And then I mentioned in the other video, I got some other containers that kind of measure, but it's not gradiated enough. Don't need a lot of these because, you know, if you have a few, after a couple days, the varnish that's left in the container hardens, and you can kind of squeeze the container, and it pretty much cleans out the varnish that goes away. So a lot of work to do. As I said, it's 2 hours approximately of work. So last night I started at 8, I finished at 10 in the evening. So if I'm ambitious, I would start at 10 tonight and finish at noon, but I think I might just wait till tomorrow and just get an early start. And so if I start at, say, 6, finish at 8, then the next day I can start at 8 and finish at 10, and then the next day I can start at 10 and finish at noon, and then I'll be out of here, back on the boat for a couple of weeks. So it's a little frustrating, not major, but I'd say, well, I need this when I'm on the boat, and I go, oh, that's at home. And then when I'm at home and I go, well, I need this, it's on the boat. And as I said in a previous video, the boat is 600 miles away from the house. The house is 600 miles away from the boat. So it's not like running over from one place to another. So we're looking at another coat, 25% varnish, approximately. And you can see up close, look at the drips here. They're not, I get a lot of work to do there. Although this is on the bottom of the table, that opening is where these pieces fit, and then they rotate out. It's highly unlikely that anyone would see them, but nonetheless, I like to get it right. And since there's no rush, there isn't any excuse not to. So I went to Walmart this morning to buy some graduated containers, and I got them, but they're not that great. This is not one of them. I was looking for filters, and I didn't find any filters, but they have some here because I went to West Marine, which I feel sorry for. I was the only customer there. I don't know how they do business, and their sign says they're closed on Sundays and Mondays. I would not be purchasing stock in West Marine, that's for sure. So this is the container. It's got all kinds of great graduations of different types of mixtures, which will be very helpful. And I got the filters. I went to Walmart this morning, and I almost grabbed coffee filters, and I said, yeah, what's the difference? Is there really a difference? And if you look through, you can see definitely that this is not as fine of a filter as a coffee filter is. So I'm in good shape, except West Marine didn't have the Interlux varnish. But in New Jersey, I've purchased Interlux varnish. So I have a little bit more here. It has a bit of a film on it when I open it up, so this filter is very important. But next week I'll be on the boat, and I have Interlux varnish there, so I'll bring it back. It's 600 miles away, so I can't just jump in the car and go get it, but I think I'll be okay until then. Another coat, probably 25%. I didn't really use the gradients on this side of the measuring containers, and I did stay up till 10 o'clock to start this work, which means that it's 11:30, 11:40 right now. So that means that tomorrow I wouldn't be able to start the next coat till 11:40, 12 o'clock, midnight. I don't think that's going to happen. It does look good, and so a lot of it goes away when I scruff it up. And the leaves, a lot of that looks good right now, and then it doesn't. After, oh, did I miss a spot right there? I think I did. Maybe. I did sand it. I didn't just scruff it up. There were some blobs that needed to be sanded, so I did. So that's where we are. I used the filters. I used the container, but I didn't really use the gradients on the side to do a percentage mix, but I think it's 25% or more thinner. We're looking at another thin coat, probably 25% varnish and 25% thinner and 75% varnish. I'm getting ready to scruff it up. It takes 2 hours almost to prepare and to apply. So Saturday night I went from 10 o'clock in the evening till midnight, which meant that I couldn't start again till midnight on Sunday, which was a little bit too late for me. So now it's Monday morning, and I'll be able to start You can see on this guy there's a glob there. I'll have to take care of that. We're looking at the leaves now. The 25% thinner, 75% varnish. It's really looking nice. I wouldn't say it's looking great, but I'm impressed, you know, because I'm the guy doing this. So it's pretty cool. We'll definitely get there. I'm gonna leave in the next couple days to be on the boat. So I won't finish this before I leave, but I will be able to finish it when I get back. Another scruffed up example here. It looks better before I scruff it. I'm not sure how much I'm actually leaving on there as far as varnish goes, but I still have to tack cloth it. And again, I forgot to do this one, so I'll have to come back and do that. So now we're looking at the leaves. This is the bottom side of the leaves. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm trying to get it as perfect as possible. That little corner right there doesn't look so good, but I'll keep thinning it out, the varnish, and putting it on. All right, another coat. This time, still I'm trying to do 20-25% thinner, but what's happening is that I'm pouring more varnish into the container, and lessons learned. I've learned pour the varnish first. It's easier because I'm using a filter. So I get a certain amount of varnish in the container, and then it's easier to pour the thinner after the varnish. So that's one lesson learned. Because I can't really see how much varnish is going in when I'm holding the filter. So I put the varnish in first, and then I can see how much varnish I have, and I can be more accurate with my amount of thinner. But I'm also pouring the unused varnish back into the can, and so it's probably more than 25% thinner. These are the leaves. Another lesson learned is to not take off the latex gloves until I've finished these videos, because sometimes the video while I'm making it, I see something that needs to be remedied, so I want to put a little more varnish someplace or use the brush again, and I think it's better to have the gloves back on. Plus, until I totally seal the can, I don't get any of that stuff on my hands, which is not that easy to clean off compared to how easy it is to have clean hands after I take the latex. And here we are again with another coat of varnish on there. I'm going to scruff it up and then add another coat of varnish, scruff it up with some steel wool, which gives the next coat of varnish something to grab onto. It looks pretty good. And then it's going to sit for a couple of weeks because I'll be out on the boat. And then I wanted to get it done and back in the cockpit, but before I went out again tomorrow, but didn't happen. So if I look really close, I don't know if it'll show up in the camera, but there are like scratch marks. Now I've put the varnish on here after I used the steel wool to just to scruff up the varnish below it so that the new steel wool had something to grab onto. But there are some scratch marks on it, visible. I don't know what that is. Oh, it looks like scratch marks. It might be brush marks, but that shouldn't be. But, and it's It's on these pieces where I think the varnish looks too thick. That kind of looks like fingerprints. I don't know what to do about that. But this is what we got so far. I'm gonna scruff it up, then put another coat of varnish on in a 25% thinner, 75% varnish. You know, as I do some of these pieces and scrub them up and sand them down and try to make them as close to perfect as possible, I am thinking about the fact that some of these pieces are not visible to once they're back in place on the boat. Certain parts of those are definitely not visible. And then I'm also looking at this and saying, you know, this is a lot of work and it's just not perfect. And I'm a little disappointed in that. But all in all, I am kind of impressed with my work, because this is not anything close to what I do on a daily basis. More pictures of the leaves that come up and down. I'm heading out to the East Coast tomorrow to spend a couple weeks on the boat and do a little varnish work out there, because I looked at the weather and it should be pretty nice for varnish work. Temperature wise, looking in mid-70s, they're saying, unless I was looking at the wrong area, but I think I got it right. Anyway, it'll be a couple weeks now before I do anything here, so this stuff will be pretty well hardened by the time I get back. I'm gonna order some more bronze wool and have it delivered out there to the boat. All right, I sanded it down. I put the teak cleaner part A and B, or 1 and 2, and I let that dry for 24 hours or close to it. And I showed a picture of the before, and I also showed a picture of the other side of the aft rail. I get a few coats on. We're supposed to be in the 70s here in Jersey City next week. I think it's in the 60s right now. It's quite comfortable. And I'll get a few coats on next week and tomorrow. All right, the blue tape is in place. It's a beautiful day here in Jersey City. It's supposed to go up as high as 79 degrees next week. This is the 3rd week of October 2024. So I should have a few days available for putting in varnish onto the second aft grab rail. And here we have the first coat, 50% varnish, 50% thinner on the aft grab rail. Today's Sunday. I got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And if I stick around, I work on Fridays here in Brooklyn. If I stick around, I can get one more coat on Saturday. So after the first coat of 50-50, 50% thinner 50% varnish. It doesn't look very good. It's still rough. I just tack clothed it down, getting ready to put the second coat on. It's going to be a lot less thinner and a lot more varnish for this one. Second coat of varnish. We're having incredible warm weather this week in Jersey City, and there's my fear that the supervisor, my dog, will touch the railing. Another coat of varnish on this beautiful day in Jersey City. This particular guy is darker than the other side, and I'm not quite sure why. This might be the last coat of the season. It's a full varnish, no thinner. But what I noticed on the other side, the grab rail on the other side, the starboard side, I already varnished it. But some of the varnish, I was wiping it up on the outside of the blue tape, and what happened is in some places it spread a very thin coat of varnish, which is now there permanently. I have to get that off. I also noticed that using the brass or bronze wool, and I do have a little sliver right up there stuck in the varnish, so that's going to have to be scruffed down if there's one more coat, because the weather's about to change here. It's pretty nice today. I might be able to get one in tomorrow. Probably not. So if you look on this side real closely, you can see where the tape was and where it wasn't. I scrubbed this down with Comet, but there's still a residual amount of varnish there. So this time on the other side, on the starboard side, those aren't bubbles of varnish, that's water. I was scrubbing it down. But to try to avoid this happening on this side, what happened on this side happening on the other side is that I'll go back afterwards and wipe it down with the thinner. So hopefully that will eliminate this mess, which I thought maybe Comet would be abrasive enough, but I don't know. I have to figure out another way to get that off now. That's it. Last one. There's the supervisor chiming in. I think there's like 4 coats, maybe 5 coats too thin. 1, 2, 3 full varnish. It's darker than the other one, and I don't know why. I think I got all the cleaner 1 and 2 off. The teak cleaner 1 and 2 of A and B. But it definitely has a different color to it. Alright. Blue tape's gone. Still got a little bit of that film over there where the tape wasn't. I thought I wiped it down good with thinner. It appears I didn't. And it's also much darker than the other side. But that's it for varnish for this year. I'll scrub it down and put a bunch more coats on next spring. Okay, so the grab bars are kind of difficult to sand the bottom parts. I got the two small ones. There's big ones are more than twice as large on the forward side of the boat. So, you know, I was thinking, what can help me to do that? And it looks like this guy might very well do the trick. I looked online and saw some reviews on YouTube, which is a great source. And then I went to Amazon, and it's like 30 or 40 bucks. And they said they would deliver it today. And that was like 10 or 11 o'clock, maybe even noon. And, you know, here it is, I think, I don't know, let me look here, 8 o'clock, a little bit after 8, and it's on my front porch. I'm more a Ryobi guy, but they had 2 strikes against it. One that was bigger than this. No, they had 3 strikes. 2, it didn't look like this rotated. So, and 3rd, it was battery operated, so it was a bunch larger. So I'm going to try this, which is a Wen file sander. And what I like about it is this guy rotates. This guy rotates like that and like that. And I think that will make doing the underside of those grab bars and some of the side parts of them a lot easier. I'll be back out on the boat in a couple weeks, and I might try it out, but definitely, this is the end of October now. There's no way there's going to be any more varnish put on this season. So yeah, I can see this working. This little orange bar here, you pivot that, and then that allows you to rotate this arm. And it doesn't have a lot of width to it, which again is a plus. And it comes with the instructions, which I had to read to figure out how to rotate it. It helped. And some extra belts. 1, 2, yeah, probably 3 different parts of coarseness. And I thought something goes in here, but we'll look at the instructions real quick. Figure 5. Dust extractor hose. Okay. I didn't see that. No. So, I guess I didn't get it, or I put it someplace where I don't know where it is. But anyway, with or without that, it's still good. You know, it'd be nice to keep some of the dust off the boat. But I think we're looking at a very useful tool to add to the collection. Well, one thing I learned from the varnish work is that the pre-varnish is dusting, and that takes a lot of time to sand it down and get it right. But the sawdust on the surfaces took me about a week once I got back to just clean the sawdust off of all of these surfaces here, and it's a lot of work. So the learning curve is steep, but it's simple stuff, except I will definitely get some kind of a either sanded outside from now on, or I get some kind of a enclosure so that it holds up the sawdust, keeps it inside that enclosure, because that was a lot of work. It was a week of time just to clean the dust off of all of these surfaces here. So now I can get back to sanding and varnishing. All right, let's take a look. Getting ready to scruff another coat on here. Does this guy work? Yeah, okay, so this is what we have right now. Spend an hour or so scruffing it up. And then I'll put another coat of varnish on. I will thin it down a little bit, but not much. These are the leaves for the table. One leaf I've taken off this edge here. A lot of things on the boat have this little raised edge so things don't fall over when the boat rocks side to side, I think is the reason why. These screws were difficult to get out on the first one. Well, one of them was. And I took it off of this one. But I didn't want to risk taking it off of the other one because now I got to find a proper screw to replace it. The one that didn't come off. Alright, so we got another coat of varnish on. I sanded it down, scruffed it up, sanded the little blobs down, scruffed it up, and I just don't know if I'm going to do any more. It seems like it's not getting any better. I'll have to think about it, but it looks good. I mean, unless you're like right on top of it. If I get right on top of it, I can see that it's not so great in spots. But all in all, it definitely looks better than it did before. Let's start putting it back together, maybe. These are the leaves. Got another coat on them. And, you know, I'm going out on the boat tomorrow and Friday. Today's Wednesday. We got the election results this morning. I did anyway. And so we have a different 4 years than I was expecting. But I'm thinking about stopping at this point, not putting any more coats on. There's no reason to, because I mean, there's no reason to stop. I'm not in any rush. But what I have is these filters, and I think they're really good idea, because it does filter out those Interlux is getting a film on top of it. So I can pour that in the filter, and then inside of there I just get the varnish. I'm putting maybe 20% thinner in it. Another thing I learned is to clean that out with a, I'm talking about the container there, clean that out with a paper towel, and then it's definitely reusable. Anything that's left just kind of cracks out and by squishing the container. So that's the last thing to do for today. And today will be the last coat on the other side. I think this is enough. So in the next couple of days, I'll start putting my table back together. But I'm flying out to the boat the next 2 trips. I'm not going to take the table with me on the plane. These are the leaves, and the last coat's going on, and then we'll just wait until the next time I drive out there to the boat. So there's no hurry, there's no rush. You got springtime would be the deadline to put the table back up, and right now it's middle of November. So I don't think there's any rush. I could put more coats on, but I don't see any real value in it. Well, I think this is it. This is the last scruff with the steel wool. I used copper wool to begin with, but it's not necessary because of the residual, the wool that falls off. I'm not too concerned about it falling off in the house here in my workshop, because I got that little robot that'll just pick it up. But on the boat, that falling off of the pieces of the wool, if it's steel and I don't pick it all up off of the boat deck, then it rusts. So the copper wool is, I think, a good investment for the outside on the boat, but not inside in the house. And the other lesson learned was I should have bought more of this, the tack cloths. I think I overused them. The gloves are a good investment, and I'm trying to think about how I'm going to do my last coat. Am I going to put any thinner on it or not? I haven't quite decided yet. So the leaf here is scruffed up. That's going to be the end of it. I think that would have looked better, the intersection there of these two pieces, had I taken the screws out like I did on the other leaf. But I had some problems with one of the screws, and I thought maybe, I wasn't trying to be lazy, or I thought maybe I would try it both ways. So, lessons learned. If I were going to go back and do it again, I would definitely take the screws out and suffer whatever the consequences are for trying to find the right screw to put back in there for the damaged one or ones. And then there might be some more lessons learned as I try to put this all back together. Now we're looking at the last coat, I believe, that's going to be put on the table before I assemble it. I'm not disappointed, but I'm not 100% happy with my performance. I think it looks pretty good. The disappointment is there's a little bit of imperfections if you look really close. It's not perfect. It certainly took a lot of time to do it, which is fine. I think the table came off in September, and now it's November, and next spring is the deadline to get it back on the boat. I don't see any reason to get the table on any earlier, although the cockpit is fully enclosed with that isinglass. So on a sunny day, it might be comfortable out there. And the last coat on the leaves. It doesn't look bad. It's wet right now. I just put that on, and I did put it on completely varnish, no thinner. Tried to be very careful on the edges because I don't want any of the varnish to drip down to the bottom and then just become a big glob. But that worked out pretty good. And if you let the varnish harden in these little containers, it's easy to use them over again. And the filters, which I used, these filters here, it worked out pretty good to get the little goop that starts to develop inside of the can after a while. And this is a different kind of a cap than normal. I kind of liked it. It just seals a different way. So the next video, I guess, will be the reassembly of the parts. And see how many mistakes I've made along the way that I should have done differently. And today will be the last coat on the other side. I think this is enough. So in the next couple of days, I'll start putting my table back together, but I'm flying out to the boat the next 2 trips. I'm not going to take the table with me on the plane. These are the leaves, and the last coat's going on, and then we'll just wait until the next time I drive out there to the boat. So there's no hurry, there's no rush. You got springtime would be the deadline to put the table back up, and right now it's middle of November. So I don't think there's any rush. I could put more coats on, but I don't see any real value in it. So I was able to put the piano hinge back on this leaf. Remember, I didn't take off that lip there on this leaf. I did take it off on this leaf, and when I was taking it off, one of the screws, which appeared to be made out of copper, failed, and so I had to extract it. So I went and bought 4 brass screws, and this is the one that failed when I was putting it in. So I put 3 brass screws in here, and they seem to go in pretty fine. This one seemed like it was having some trouble, so I had a smaller screwdriver, so I got a little bit bigger one to finish it off. It just had maybe 1 or 2 rotations to go to finish off, and it was having trouble, so I thought, well, I better take it out because I'm going to strip the head, and then it might be difficult to get it out. So I started to reverse it out, and it broke. So now I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure what the proper procedure is to get the remaining screw out of there. Do I need to take all of these screws out in order to do that? I don't know, but that's something that I need to ponder and think about, and maybe do a little bit of research on YouTube on the best way to get that screw, that brass screw, out. The glass jars to put the screws in turned out to be a good idea. It's working well, but you can see that I've got 6 long screws, 5 short screws, and then one that's slightly longer than the other one. And I'm assuming that the shorter screws are going to go into here. This is for the piano hinge, and then the other screws will go into here, and I'm assuming that's for the longer ones. But I have one longer screw, and I was trying to figure out which hole is the longer screw, and I used this. I found I was looking for a paper clip, and I found this, and that was fine to measure the depth of these 6 holes. And this one is a little deeper, and one of these 2 are a little bit deeper. I'll double check again, but I think I'll put the longer screw in the middle area as opposed to the one of the ends, and I think that that's probably a good idea. In the lesson learned column here, when I pull out a screw from an existing situation, and I'm going to pay attention to the lengths of them so that I know exactly which hole that came out of. I don't want to put it in the wrong one, force a longer screw into a shorter hole than is necessary. So at first I thought I would simply test each hole by putting the screw into it. But then on further thought, it seemed like it'd be just a smarter idea just to measure it, which is what I did. I've started to put the hardware back on, and I have my stainless steel piano hinges on both of the leaves, and the hardware is back. So we're looking good for the leaves. The glass jars to put the screws in turned out to be a good idea. It's working well, but you can see that I've got 6 long screws, 5 short screws, and then one that's slightly longer than the other one. And I'm assuming that the shorter screws are going to go into here. This is for the piano hinge, and then the other screws will go into here, and I'm assuming that's for the longer ones. But I have one longer screw, and I was trying to figure out which hole is the longer screw, and I used this. I was looking for a paper clip, and I found this, and that was fine to measure the depth of these 6 holes. And this one is a little deeper, and one of these two are a little bit deeper. I'll double check again, but I think I'll put the longer screw in the middle area as opposed to one of the ends. And I think that's probably a good idea. In the lesson learned column here, when I pull out a screw from an existing situation, and I'm going to pay attention to the lengths of them so that I know exactly which hole that came out of. I don't want to put it in the wrong one, force a longer screw into a shorter hole than is necessary. So at first I thought I would simply test each hole by putting the screw into it. But then on further thought, it seemed like it'd be just a smarter idea just to measure it, which is what I did. So I was able to put the piano hinge back on this leaf. Remember, I didn't take off that lip there on this leaf. I did take it off on this leaf, and when I was taking it off, one of the screws, which appeared to be made out of copper, failed, and so I had to extract it. So I went and bought 4 brass screws, and this is the one that failed when I was putting it in. So I put 3 brass screws in here, and they seem to go in pretty fine. This one seemed like it was having some trouble, so I had a smaller screwdriver, so I got a little bit bigger one to finish it off. It just had maybe 1 or 2 rotations to go to finish off, and it was having trouble. So I thought, well, I better take it out because I'm going to strip the head, and then it might be difficult to get it out. So I started to reverse it out, and it broke. So now I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure what the proper procedure is to get the remaining screw out of there. Do I need to take all of these screws out in order to do that? I don't know, but that's something that I need to ponder and think about, and maybe do a little bit of research on YouTube on the best way to get that brass screw out. Now this is really clever. This is the pivot, and it has a little stop right there. So these pivot out to hold the leaves in place, and then they pivot back and close like that, and they pivot back and close like that. There is a leg that stainless steel round leg that fits into these two pieces when it's not in use, and then when it is in use it fits into here, so that's pretty good. I'm having a little trouble here getting one of those screws all the way in. It's very difficult. The other big screws attached to the helm steering wheel, and then they will go over here. Now here's the issue. I think I have the right amount of screws for those piano hinges to attach to this table. I have the right amount here, 14 and 14, which is what I need. This would be, these are for this, I'm pointing to it without that camera, this to attach to this, so those screws are good. These were the copper screws that I broke one. I had to drill it out, and then I replaced them. Can't see it right now. But these, I have no idea, and I've done a very poor job of documenting the deconstruction of this system. I have 2 screws for that, and I have 4 holes, so I think they go on top of each other. Now those, I was thinking, because those spacing of those screws right there is exactly the same spacing of these, and I thought, well, maybe they go underneath there, but then I found these extra 2 screws, so I think they go someplace else, and I have no idea. So these are extra, these are good, place for those, place for those. These, I don't know. I've got extra pieces. That sound was the little robot going back into its home and cleaning itself, emptying its basket. Of course, that would always happen at a point where I'm trying to demonstrate the reassembly of this project. And I was discussing my failures here, which are these 2 pieces. I have no idea where they might go, but they definitely go somewhere. And I have these 2 screws, which I have no idea where they might go either. Okay, the good news is I figured out where these extra pieces go. They are stops. They create stops so that this piece, which pivots out, there's a stop over here, and then there's a stop over here so that it doesn't pivot out more than that. Unfortunately, I'm missing 2 screws, so I need one that's this size. Looks like it's a 1/2 inch, maybe a number 6, because I have 2 of these, and I only have 2 screws. So it looks like they're copper screws again. Anyway, solved that puzzle, which is good. Now I gotta find out how to get 2 more screws. Copper, number 6 by 1/2 inch. All right, so mistake made. I'm back on the project after at least a month away in other responsibilities. But I had 1 screw here that broke. I got the head out of there, but the shaft is still in there. So this is the table that I removed this lip from, and the other table leaf I left the leaf on because I lost this. So the original screws were copper, I believe. So I replaced with brass, but I made a mistake here, and that is that I should not have put this back on before I drilled out the shaft that's in there now. So what I did was I purchased a porcelain tile and stone hole saw, 3/16 of an inch. I think that's the right size, I hope. And while I was there, I saw these clamps and I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. I might use them someday. I don't see how I'm going to do it, but I did watch a good video on how to get that shaft out of there, and that is using that hole saw, but also clamping a piece of wood onto the wood that I want to extract the shaft from as a guide, and have, you know, there'll be a hole in that piece of wood, but I don't know how I'm gonna, I could clamp that piece of wood to this lip, but I really would lose this countersink right there then. So the mistake I was talking about is I started to put this back on before I took out that shaft, the screw shaft that's in there, and you can see from the top, you know, it's not tight, and here it is tight. So now I'm going to have to take the brass screws out. Hopefully they'll be all right. I might have to replace them with new screws because of the head being an issue. So what I'm going to do is that hole saw is going to take out the shaft, hopefully it's still in there, and then I'm going to replace the hole. I'm going to put this 3/16 inch dowel in there, just a small piece of it. And had an interesting thing at Home Depot, and I was checking out in the self-checkout, the person there, nice woman, came up to me and pointed to this dowel and asked if I would like her to carry it out to the car for me. Made me laugh, gave me a good smile for sure. So anyway, back in the saddle, I'm gonna take the screws out first and then figure out how to clamp a piece of wood there as a guide, and then drill a hole in that piece of wood, then figure out, and then actually clamp it, and then I'll drill the hole, hopefully get that shaft out of there, and then put the small new dowel in there. So I don't know how I didn't know this before, but the shaft of that screw is sticking out. I should be able to grab that with some needle nose pliers and just unscrew it. Anyway, that's attempt number 1, which means that I won't have to use my 3/16 inch diamond coated hole saw. All right, so I went to Home Depot this morning. I really should have thought this through ahead of time and bought screws yesterday when I bought the hole cutter and these clamps and this 3/16 dowel to go into where the hole was cut. But when I took the lip off, I had expected that I was going to have to used the hole cutter on this one, but it was a new screw and it had just broke. So it was easy to get it out. But now I put them back in. They look good. Now, the last step will be to put in these screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 2 leaves will be 28 screws. And if those screws go in easily, that's pretty much the end of the project until the reassembly. Well, I used an Amazon box and some scraps of wood to lift this guy up enough so that I could put my hinges in easier, and that worked out pretty well. Problem is that I used this method. It worked out really well for every piece, but now I can only find 13 of the 14 stainless steel screws that I need. So there will be another trip back to Home Depot to buy a package of stainless steel screws. So I've found that I have a 50% chance of getting it right, and it looks like this bar that pivots out to hold this leaf has a cant to it, or an angle, and because it goes in this direction, it's hitting the hinge. So now I have to take it off and flip it around and see if that will solve the problem, because the this gap, this high gap down here, needs to be on this side in order to clear that hinge. All right, so looking at the bottom of the table, it's very clever. These guys spin out and they have little rests over there, which would be from the weight from the table, and there, and then in the middle, right here, is a stop for these guys. Very clever. This is for the post that holds the table up, and this is for the bar that, or post that goes into this. And I've got one in, I've put the other one in over there, and then the bar will come across that. Now obviously it won't work when the table's open, but it wouldn't be there when the table's open. It would be there in that post. So I think I just have one more piece to connect to the end of the table. I guess it would be on this side, opposite where the post is. Yep, I got one more piece that goes in right there, and I might be finished with this project short of the actual final assembly. All right, won't be the last video, but it's just about. I've got everything done. Got a couple of screws missing in the piano hinges on the other side of the leaf. This is an Amazon box. I'm going to fill this up with some sort of packing and then transport this beast back out to the boat. It's been several months and looks fairly good to me. I'm happy. Looks better than it did originally. And my friend Louis Norris did this for $200. I probably got $100 or more worth of materials, and certainly dozens of hours worth of time. So that $200 divided by, well, subtract really $100 for materials, that leaves $100 worth of to pay for labor, times say 25 hours of my time, probably an underestimate, would mean that I was paid, or for $200 for this whole thing, that would work out to about $4 an hour worth of value for my time if I was using Louis Norris's total cost as the value for this product.